is episode 449 of This is Whole Life. I wanted to say 450 and then say, no, not really, it's 449. But it is really 449. We're just trying to jump ahead because 50 sounds cooler than 51.
Yeah, 50 does
50 is a
sound
good
cool.
number.
It is. Yeah. It's easier to say. And
I like 50.
It seems like a better number for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it does. But of course, here at This is Whole Life, this is us digging deeper into the message here at Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida every week. And this week is something special before we say who is here, because there's not a new edition, but an old edition re-editioned.
Old is kind of harsh.
Old. Well, it's not true either. Familiar was probably the word I was looking for. But this year, we launched our new theme this week for 2025, which is Overflow. And we would love to know what you think about Overflow, because always this conversation, we wanted to include your voice because that's part of the conversation. It's part of the fun. So during and after the service every week, you can email podcast@wholelife.church or 407-965-1607 for voicemail or text, because Melanie wants to know.
I do.
And Ken does too. But to my left and across the table is Melanie Bachman, our worship pastor here at Whole Life Church. To my right, as always, just making an extra move so he knows for sure it's on the right and not just across, because that wouldn't be right, is Ken Wetmore, lead pastor. And all the way from where?
Brazil.
Lucas is back. Okay, so before we start everything else, I think you've already overflowed into 2025. How was the trip?
It was amazing. I was just saying at staff meeting today, I'm just so thankful that I had the opportunity to go. I don't take it for granted at all. It was nice. It was overflowing.
Well, you look a little more tan.
Man, one day before we came, I decided to play beach tennis for 3 hours.
Beach tennis?
Yeah.
How does that work?
This is something in Brazil. It's like pickleball here. They play beach tennis there.
It feels like the ball wouldn't bounce at all.
Oh, it's no bounce. It's just like two people, and then the ball can't drop.
Oh, ball can't drop. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never played pickleball, so I'll have to be. I mean, I've seen people do it, but I don't know any of the rules.
Yeah.
I've just started playing pickleball, and I love pickleball.
Yeah.
Everybody was telling me about it, and I don't know if it's just the age I'm reaching or what, but I love pickleball.
So, that requires like a tennis court. It's a pickleball court, same court, different court.
You can play pickleball on a tennis court, but the net is a different height, so you have to adjust the net on a tennis court.
So, who do we have to talk to around here? We got to talk to John about cordoning off some space or pouring a concrete slab out in the overflow.
I think we could probably just mark it off in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Why not?
It's actually so fun. What's really appealing is I played back in Nashville. I played a fair amount of tennis with Melanie's husband Tim, and man, as you get older, it gets kind of harder on your knees, and just running isn't as fun as it used to be. And that's what I love about pickleball. If you have two-player pickleball, the amount of moving around that you're doing,
it's good cardio.
Minimal.
So name something as you get older that gets more fun than it used to be.
Pickleball.
Reading. Staying indoors.
Naps.
In the air conditioning. Naps. Yeah, that's a good one. Melanie, you're looking deep in thought.
I am deep in thought.
Yeah.
I'll have to ponder that one.
Ponder? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe we'll come back
Elective surgery.
Wow.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Good. Well, as you can see, we're already overflowing with laughter for the new year, so that's a good sign. So, Overflow, how do we get here? Ken arrives 2022, correct?
Yep. No, I came here in 2021.
But we didn't start.
We didn't start our themes. I gave myself a couple months before I rolled out.
Because you were like April, May, something? No, June. Wasn't your first one?
My first sermon was in June. I got here in April.
That was right.
Yeah.
So 2022, we were Arise. 2023, we were Follow Me.
Right.
2024, just a couple days ago, was Connect.
Yeah.
And now 2025, Overflow.
Yep.
And 2026 is going to be something that we're not going to talk about yet.
Not yet, because we have to wait a year for that launch.
We have to overflow first. So I'm not sure. I think I know. Overflow. What's the journey going to be like for Overflow? Because I'm not sure. For people that watch online, people that come here in person, podcast family, online family. Overflow, what should we expect for this year? Because I'm not sure that I totally know what Overflow totally means. I mean, like Connect, I think, is pretty obvious, and I think Overflow has room for a little interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Overflow, the idea is with Overflow is that you have more than enough. That you have enough to share. That what's happening can't be contained. And so with the theme this year, what we're trying to point people towards is that when you arise, when Jesus calls you to arise, and you do, when you follow Jesus, and then when you connect with God and the people that God puts around you, it creates more than enough in your life. It creates overflow in your life. It basically moving from what I talked about Sabbath of this idea of scarcity, a scarcity mindset, into a mindset of there's more than enough. I don't have to hoard things. I can go ahead and share because I'm not worried. It's easy to share with somebody if you think there's the resources to replenish. It's hard to share if you don't think that there's the resources to replenish it. And so the idea this year is how can we get ourselves into a mentality that God's given us enough time, enough energy, enough love, enough peace, enough patience, enough of those things that we can share them, that we can act like we really believe these things. And so, so that's where we're gonna spend some time this year.
So for those of you who maybe feel a little bit more towards the introvert side and we're a little afraid of Connect, we're all going to be with you on this one, I think, because I think this one, no matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or whatever your personality type, I think we've all felt the scarcity complex.
Whatever kind of vert you are.
Whatever the vert you are, yes. So tell us about WholeLife indulgences. A complete set of 4. There was people that were murmuring and typing in the chat about, man, this is great. Where do we get our set? So we're just.
Yeah, that may have been improv and not in a good way there.
Yeah, that was not in rehearsal.
That was not in rehearsal.
However, for $24.95.
I think we can charge a little bit more than that, Melanie, for ticket straight to heaven. So
I guess so.
So we're moving into that indulgences thing, I guess.
And before, since I wasn't at staff meeting this morning, the WholeLife family online were like, listen, what about us and coins? If you
Yeah.
give me a t-shirt, can you throw one
Yep.
of the new coins in with that, or maybe 2?
I'm pretty sure every T-shirt will have 1 coin sent with it.
There you go. Aaron, if you're listening, there's your answer. So there you go. Perfect. I thought we could. I kind of promised in advance, so I didn't know.
Way to make promises the rest of us can keep.
Overflowing
I
promises.
may have to order some more of those coins out of my budget.
But we're not. But I appreciate that you understood the not scarcity mindset of
Right.
things. So
I
that
knew God would come through, or I would come through with my budget line somewhere.
God would come through you.
Through
Yes.
me. That's
Yeah.
through me. That's the better one. Yeah. I liked how you said, though, that God, the scarcity mindset, breaking it down a little bit, that we think that God doesn't have enough to give us. And so if it starts with, well, I don't have, and then you can insert whatever that might be in your life, how in the world do I have enough to give to somebody else? And part of me wonders if we realize that just because I have a scarcity of X, Ken might have a scarcity of Y, which may be maybe something I have more abundance in. And so I wonder if that's part of Connect and how we branch from 24. So I'm thinking, how do we step over from Connect to Overflow in a way that helps me visualize something? And I just thought, if we've been connecting,
Imagine connecting a hose
to
a water source.
and someone with a yellow raincoat on
Yeah.
and rubber boots.
So if you want to know how that connects, now you know.
But if we've been making connections and we see somebody else that you can identify, or because you're connected now, through conversation that somebody has a need that you have an abundance in, instead of us thinking that, well,
But what if they had a need in an area you didn't have abundance in?
Oh, now I see. Now you're taking the extra step on me, Ken. I thought, maybe we could just baby step this and go.
For just the first week of January, we could take it a little easy. Huh?
We could just say, hey, there's something I can do because I have extra, and that might hurt a little bit less. It might let me dip my toes in the water. Or is that? But in seriousness, is that the I don't know if say the wrong way to do it? We should be open to whatever we have and working, let God work the overflow through us. But that's, it's a little scary for the first step of the year.
God is a little scary sometimes.
Okay, moving on. No, but I know what my needs are, right?
Yep.
Or I at least know what I want, which I usually more easily talk myself into that it is a need. So, okay, do we have a book resource? Do we have something we can work on? How do I truly? And I think a lot of times we know it and we just make excuses as to why this is a need. But there's sometimes where it genuinely feels like, look, this is a need, and it's not getting met. It does not put me in an overflow mood. It does not make me say, man, I am so blessed. I'm grateful for these blessings. I mean, I am up, I'm breathing air. I have a house to live in, someone else doesn't. I mean, there's all of that, but it doesn't. None of that seems to be as important when you don't see past the part where it's like, I still don't have this, and this is something that, for whatever reason, my life is really lacking, or I feel like I'm not who I should be because of it. To put yourself, I don't know what the step over is to say, well, good, I'm here for you, Ken. What can I help you with? That's a tough walk over or a step over. That seems like it's a tall wall for me personally. So what's our first step in identifying how we might be able to maybe change that mindset or look at situations differently? I'm not sure, because I'm not very good at it. Is why I'm saying it, because if I was, I would say, hey, this really works for me. But I don't really see a ton of things other than trying to be really grateful, which helps. But it doesn't always feel like, well, I'm grateful for what I have, but I still don't have, I don't think, enough to make a difference. Or maybe we overestimate how much is needed to make a difference. I just ended up with a lot of questions when I'm looking at my life, and we've all been in that place, not necessarily underwater, but still like, well, the nose is above, but whew.
Well, I think it also depends on what we're talking about. I think, Ken mentioned specifically that we're not, usually when we think of, scarcity and overflow and blessings that we receive, we think of material things.
Okay.
And actually, I was going to tease you about this, Ken, because you said it's not about material things. But then when someone asked a question in response, you made a reference to a way that you were blessed with material things.
Yeah, there we go.
But I think, but what you said about breaking out of the mindset of that blessings are only material and the only kind of overflow that can happen is material. I think, and also when we're in a collective of people and looking at that collective and thinking, what do I have that overflows that could benefit, that could overflow into people around me? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something material, It could be just a generosity of spirit toward people. It could be an overflow of acceptance. It could be, I don't have a lot of money, but I have some time, so I can overflow my time into this. So I think there are a lot of different ways to look at it, and I think it's important not to get stuck in the material.
That's really good. Because I think you're right. I think just as humans, maybe our default is material because, look at the world we live in, and it's very easy to make that first connection like, oh, they must be talking about material things. But also, even in spiritual things, I'm not sure how comfortable we are sometimes talking to people that we might feel are, and I'm not saying that everything has to be a huge theological, discussion, but I think we overestimate how much we think other people are smarter than us, maybe in certain things, if we don't have confidence. And we're like, well, what would they? This is really good, but I think they would think that's very simplistic. Or I don't know anything past this. So what would they do with that? And yet sometimes when you just offer a small word or a word of encouragement, or share that, hey, I was reading my Bible this week and this verse kept popping up in different places, and I read it someplace else, and verses that were complimentary. And I was just kind of thinking this, even if it's not anything earth shattering, that happened to me a couple weeks ago. Someone shared that a little something they'd been thinking about, and it didn't make a big impression at the time. But then later that day, not that day, it was probably 3 or 4 days past that, I was reading a devotion that my mom had sent me on Facebook. And I was like, man, this seems really familiar. Like, have I read this lately? Well, it was this other comment. And when I put the two together, it really was a really meaningful moment for me. And so I had to text that person back and say, we had this little discussion. Thanks for sharing this little nugget of information that you gave, because it really did come back to me in a couple days. And it just made a complete picture, where the other would have been, not that it wasn't fine, but it would have been not as meaningful for sure. And those, well, at least for me, I like those. I think those make you feel good when someone else is moved by something that you give them. So maybe it's just the scarcity doesn't have to be nothing.
Well, no, and I think if you have, you can have a scarcity mindset of, oh, there's not enough available, and you can also have a scarcity mindset of, I have nothing to give. And I wonder if we find ourselves in a scarcity mindset of, I don't have anything to offer, maybe the first step is just allowing God to show you what you have to offer, being open and being more self-reflective about, what it is that you, as your unique person, what you bring that could overflow, and not discount the possibility that you might come up against a need and you feel like you don't have anything to offer, and then that overflow happens without you necessarily even realizing it.
Yeah. Well, the story of in 2 Kings that Ken shared with Elisha, that is one of the coolest stories maybe in all of the Bible. Every time I've read that one to Emily in trying to explain like the blind part in how this happens, and it's like, no, bad guys, they're there. They're like, no, don't go. It's bad guys. And it's like, yeah, but they couldn't. They're trying to explain that. So I thought Ken did maybe the best job I've ever heard on that story. But that story, when you come around to the end, it's always like a gut check that you've got the upper hand, you've got the overflow, and you've got the best overflow. You've got God's absolute, direct, in-your-face overflow, cannot be denied, no way around it. This is not happenstance. And then when you're like, ha ha ha, can I kill him? That's the best part. You're like, and he's just like, no, that's not what we do. We don't do that with prisoners of war. We have a feast. And you're like, what? A feast? And then well, not going to speak for anybody else, but me, I'm thinking, oh man, I'm having some Jonah problems right now. Like, look, we got it right where we want them. Just let me do it. Right. And I know that would have been my initial reaction, was like, let's just take care of this once and for all. And then that really changes your idea of what what if you have it too? Like, don't keep it to yourself. Like, if you have some, don't hoard it. Keep it, share it, and be generous with it, right?
Overflow.
Well, one of the things that I love is the indiscriminate nature of overflow. When we read in the Old Testament about what it says that God's ideal was for Israel, was that Israel was going to be so full of what God wanted to bless the world with, that it was going to overflow and bless everybody. Not just that God was going to have a people that God was going to bless, and that was going to be, its own little oasis of God's blessings. It was supposed to be so powerful that it overflowed onto everybody and just splashed onto everybody. And so what would it mean for us to lean into the idea that we are here so that we can indiscriminately overflow and bless everybody?
Wow. that's not usually how you think of God's chosen people.
Right.
That's not the way that I grew up listening to the story. It was even when they got the overflow, they had the manna, they had God one-on-one, the fire, in the temple, and yet you're like, man, if I had that. But there has been times in my life when looking back, you go, wow, you really did have in this pocket, that was it. And then what did you do with it except squander the opportunity sometimes? And then other times like, wow, that really worked out. Too many times I found for myself that I don't notice the overflow, because when things are going well, which we typically would equate to overflow, you're like, man, things are going pretty smooth right now. Let's not rock the boat. Because then what if that just changes my string of good luck, as it were? Or, things have been going really well, so why mess with success? And then this morning, as I was in the hospital with Emily, got admitted over the yesterday morning, and things change so fast. And luckily everything's fine, and it's something we can work through moving forward. But in the moment, and until you have some answers, or until you have that realization, it makes you realize, what are you hoarding it for? Because tomorrow it could be that, that could be that. It could be over. That could be the end. And it really makes you, at least for me, this was timely for this, that if the overflow is there and you see it, let it go. Is someone going to sing for me? Melanie, you're the only one I trust.
We're not doing that one today.
Oh, man.
Melanie, we trust.
But so this is why we do themes, because you mentioned I don't always think about overflow. This is why we do a theme for top of the mind awareness.
Yeah.
Because you know what? If we have a theme of overflow, and you've got a T-shirt that says overflow, and you've got stuff around you that reminds you that you are supposed to overflow, guess what? You're going to see opportunities to overflow like you haven't before.
No, that's true.
I think some people would say that they noticed that last year with talking about connecting.
Yeah.
Putting that again on the top of your mind, that we're going to connect. And I also think the other part of it is that it takes more than one Sabbath together to unpack some of these themes and some of these ideas. And all too often, I think that probably we have about a quarter to half of our congregation gone every week somewhere else. They're, whether that's just not feeling good and staying home that day, or on a business trip, but I'd say I really think that probably, around 50% of our total church family is together on any given Sabbath. And so one of the reasons we do these themes is because we really want it to sink into everybody. If you talk about overflowing for a week or 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, and you just move on, there's probably a decent portion of the congregation that never heard it. There's another portion that heard it, but it's not really sinking in. So anyway, it's going to be a fun year together. I think that for me, I hope what people walk out of this year is realizing that God has the resources we need, and He doesn't have just enough. He has more than enough. I imagine that at some point this year I'll be talking about the miracle of the loaves and fish, and what you find in that miracle is that Jesus didn't just have a miracle where there was just enough food to cover all 5,000 plus people that were there. There was more than enough. It overflowed. There was more. And so there's a reason why the writers mention that they picked up 12 baskets full afterwards. There's a reason why they mention that. And it's because they want to point out to you that God is capable of doing more than enough. And again, in this particular case, we are talking about something physical. And maybe God is able to do more than enough patience for us. And maybe God is able to create more than enough self-control in us. And maybe God is able to do a lot of these things that maybe we don't put as much of a price tag on. We're like, that's not as valuable as food and something to eat and whatever else. But the fact of the matter is maybe those are the things that matter the most to God. That character that when somebody else, chews us out, that we figure out how to be kind and gracious back. And I think we all struggle with aspects of that. But what if we were what if our relationship with God so overflowed that it made us kinder, it made us, more like Jesus?
Imagine a potluck with all that leftovers.
Yeah.
Wow. Especially when nobody brought anything.
Yeah.
It was the barest cupboard meal ever attended, and all the leftovers. That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to. I think there was a real excitement around Overflow, and a big shout out to Melanie and Albert and Abel who made the song choices. I mean,
Yep.
Man, what a great worship service to bring us into this, and everything just made you feel like you were at home. It was a cohesive look and feel in worship, and then anytime the baptistry is out, but we're not actually baptizing someone, that's there's only good things that can happen from that.
It was funny to look at the panic in people's eyes on the first 2 or 3 rows. when
the garden hose came in off the
Yeah.
side and the camera followed, and people were the collective.
I thought about putting those splash zone
Oh,
signs
man,
on the
that was-
chairs, but I was afraid that the first 3 rows would be empty. So I thought, well, we'll just let them find out.
And there was
It'll be
a
fine.
lot of people. So 3 rows. I don't know
Yeah,
where
3
everyone-
rows.
where everybody else would have gone for the worship service, because there was not
There's
there wasn't
nowhere
an
else to
extra
go.
wasn't an extra 3 rows. So excuse me. So let's get to the questions. Matthew during first service asked, "Can loving your enemies be enough to discard a scarcity mindset, or is there more to this?"
Maybe could we say it's part of it?
Part of it, okay.
Yeah.
Loving your enemies.
I think it's an important part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's 100% of it. I think there's another aspect of it is the believing that my God will provide for all your needs through his marvelous bounty.
Well, and I believe we answered this question, but I think you had mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, that you wanted to go a little bit deeper with Trafina's question, which I believe it got asked in first service. She said, "Our world is filled with overflow, but most times we are overflowed with one or the other. Examples being money, gift of giving, sickness, and so forth. Is that a bad thing to be scarce in other areas if we have abundance and overflow in another? If not, what do we do? So is there a balance to this if we have a little more here, a little more there? And then, or do we have to look at this as put it all on the scales and make it balance out?"
Well, it doesn't seem like God gives everybody the same resources, does it?
You notice that too?
I have noticed that.
Okay, me too.
In fact, when it talks about gifts that God gives in the New Testament, it says to some are given this, to some are given that. And so I think it's very possible for us to have overflow of a particular gift that God gives, whether that's good judgment or, various other things. My brain is not 100% working today, Randy.
He's a little distracted.
Yeah.
Well,
I
we're
don't know
all
why.
we're all a little distracted because there's a fifth party that I didn't introduce.
We have an extra podcast member today.
So maybe this is the chicken, Rudy the Rootin' Tootin' Rooster is our official mascot, but I don't know. Daisy,
Maybe we ought to. Maybe we just ought to take a picture of it, and you can put it in the show notes, and we won't even say what it is here.
you know what? We're going to start a Discord channel this week, and so for things for the podcast. So if you are a Discord user, and I might suggest that because of the picture we're going to post that you may want to become one, check today's show notes, and we will have something for you there. And then weekly, there's always stuff in the show notes, but you can't post pictures in the show notes, and you can't do maybe some video or some other things that we might like to tease you with this year or supply you with or let overflow into your world. So the Discord channel, join Discord. The staff is on it. That's how we communicate overall on a weekly basis. And so you can join us on Discord. The link will be there and a short little section on what to do if you don't know what to do. Hey, you know what? I don't think we answered Drafina's question. Should we get back to that?
Yeah, let's jump back on that. I'd love to hear what Melanie has to say about some of that too, because you've kind of heard from me my thoughts on it. So what do you think, Melanie?
This is why we have each other.
Okay.
Because like what you were saying earlier, if there's something that I have that can overflow into the people around me, and there's something that from somebody else's life that overflows into mine, that's why we have community.
Oh,
Well said.
So we really did set this up pretty well then, from Connect moving into Overflow. Like, hey, once you guys understand what we're talking about with Overflow, you already have to have that connection part to make it work.
Right.
Okay. I'm down with that. And then we also, I know Haz answered this or asked a question in second, and I think Ken answered it, but I just wanted everyone to hear this because this is part of the connecting that we talked about last year. And I feel like this is where a year ago before Connect, I don't think we would have had this in the chat from our online family. As Aaron wrote in and said, I've become aware this year that I have had a scarcity mindset throughout my life in regards to relating to others and feeling that if another person that cares about me, if they show interest in others, then they won't care about me anymore. Like they can't divide their attention equally or something. I don't know how to explain it, but I just connected that to a scarcity mindset, if I'm understanding what Ken is saying correctly. And I think you absolutely, Aaron, and I think that's what Ken answered was, yeah, you're absolutely understanding what we're saying correctly. And I just feel like because of the whole year, like what we're talking about and, going through that process that Melanie just said, that's why we have community. That's why we do this together. I don't think before that we would have had someone in our online family just offer up a pretty tender area that you may have struggled with and just say, hey, here's where I'm at. And now I just connected it. And so congratulations, because I love it when I finally go, oh yeah, this is how this works. This is how the two go together. And so, Aaron, just thank you for being vulnerable and to share with our community.
I was going to say that. I really, those are the kind of things that help build community, because I think we all can relate to that. And so thank you. I do want to say a huge thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing that and to creating conversation and being willing to let that happen.
And asking said, might our overflow or lack simply be the results of a world that is not perfect? Can't God still be present to offer peace and purpose, even if the actual situation is not of God's making?
I think that's exactly where I'm going with this, is that in a world that is full of lack, where there are definitely not enough of a lot of different resources to go around, God wants to come in and be that overflow in our lives. He wants to create in us that overflow that is a blessing to the rest of the world.
Congratulations, online family. You're batting 1,000 today. This is good stuff. And then going back to what I mentioned earlier, we had a couple people. Tammy said, I love the idea of us being the overflow, which was, I thought, very cool. And she said, love watching Jacques on the drums. Amen.
Yeah, amen.
Amen. And then Ganashville Tim, I'll comment on what I don't have an abundance of, and that would be cowbell. I loved the cowbell on the last song, and I vote for more. Amen, Ganashville
Right.
Tim.
Well.
There, always more cowbell. I can go. I can be on board with that all the time. So it was just with all of those pieces and parts of what was happening, obviously here in the worship center, what was happening online with the online family in the chat, and just the overall feeling of that. I just this felt like we started out of the gate hot and moving in the right direction. Everything seemed to be cohesive, and I'm just excited for this as an entire theme for the year. And where does this take us for week 2? Because I don't.
We're going to be talking about this in terms of liquid, in terms of what holds liquid.
Is Zoe coming back?
Yeah.
Zoe and friends, are they coming?
I don't know whether she'll be back or not. We'll find out. And then we're going to talk about where that overflow can go.
Okay.
So that's what's happening over the next 3 weeks.
Oh man! Well, don't miss the start, because this will be the groundwork that's laid for everything that we talk about coming after that this year. And then, of course, if there's something that we said, didn't say, something you missed, and then said, "Oh man, I'd like to ask this question," go ahead and still ask them. We can always start the next episode with your questions and take care of them. Because I feel like the more questions that if we have them and we ask them, we can get a conversation happening that goes throughout the year here on the podcast. That's exactly why we do it. So we'd love to hear from you. So podcast at wholelife.church or voicemail or text 407-965-1607. 2025. I've already had to change that on so many things that you don't know how many places you have 2024 until you're like, hey, I noticed the copyright notice was still for 2024 in the last episode. Oh, right. Forgot to put that. That's something you have to change every week. So, yeah, good call. Thank you. So, for you that pointed that out, thank you. I appreciate you very, very much.
I feel like we've been working on 2025 for so long that we've been in 2025 for 6 months already.
But we're actually moving into 2026 right now.
Right.
But there's always that follow-up, like, oh, yeah, I've been working here. Now I've got to make it official with everything else. So, all right. That's going to do it for this week, guys.
Well,
or do you have something else?
We'll do it for this week.
Oh, no.
Because
what do we have?
we have not mentioned.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sleeping.
Oh, well, I mean, yes, we mentioned this.
What else didn't we mention?
But we made some references to a particular number at the very beginning of this podcast. The number 50, which has special significance for us today, January 7th, 2025.
Huh. What's that?
Does Ken look a little peaked to you? Does he look a little older?
Oh.
I think half my hair fell out last night.
Did it?
I don't know. How many teeth? Maybe we should count his teeth.
Yeah, you should definitely do that.
It's 50. He grow more
Today is Ken's 50th birthday, y'all.
Woo. And now
episode 2, what is it, 449?
449.
Yeah.
449. So
Yeah, if only we could have done 450 on Ken's 50th birthday.
That would have been pretty
that
good.
would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Man, I had that on my calendar too.
Maybe we could do next week's episode.
So-
right now.
Well, it's not like you haven't had some stuff on your plate today, Randy. We'll let this one slide.
Yes.
Now I understand the donuts.
But you know
I
what?
get it.
We are going to have cover your ears, Ken.
All
we
right.
are going to have a birthday party for Ken.
Oh, he's not going to like that at all.
On January 25th. At 6:30 p.m. here at the church.
Ooh.
So if you want to get your party on,
There you
we're
go.
going to use Ken as an excuse to have a party.
Excellent. 25th. Mark your calendar, tell your friends, and
Yeah.
bring the best Ken gift you can think of.
That's right.
That's just your presence.
Wow.
Oh,
Presents.
there.
P-R-E-N. How do you spell that again? P-R-E-N-C. I don't know.
The one without a T.
I don't know. I didn't go to school
I
that
didn't go to
long.
school
Well,
for
I
that.
mean, he's 50 now, so we're
Yeah.
going to have to let that slide as well.
Spelling goes pretty quick, doesn't it? Along with the eyesight. It's like, wait.
We're
Thank
lucky
you,
he
Google.
remembered the word.
I heard, my wife didn't tell me too much, but I hear there's going to be some sort of cooking
Yeah.
contest or something.
There is going to be.
I get to judge. I was so
Ken
excited.
gets to be the
man.
judge of the cooking contest.
So we're going to turn some people against me
Yes.
for my birthday.
If you would like to
Why
present
do you
your
want
best,
my food? Why did you pick it? Mine's better.
But that's perfect.
Yeah,
You'd
why
be
not?
happy to say that.
I don't mind.
if you would like for Ken to taste your food, or if you would like to punish Ken with your food, stay tuned for details on how to make that happen.
Yeah, it'll be everywhere, not just here, but it'll be everywhere soon.
Yes.
So awesome! I didn't think. Are we? No. Are we? Well, I was gonna say we. Are you gonna sing "Happy Birthday," or should I find a track somewhere that we can use for "Happy Birthday" here on the
On the
that I can
podcast.
insert right
right
here?
now, you probably ought to do. I will give you extra credit if you can find the track that I used to play on my morning drive show for birthdays.
All right,
Okay.
tee it up. What do I got to find?
It was the animal's birthday, and it was woo, 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 and then meow 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 meow, 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 meow. And so it went through all these moo, 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 moo. It went through all these different animals, and I would actually make the person sing with it for their birthday when they would call into the show. It's pretty
so
great.
we're going to make you sing with
No,
it?
because you don't have the track right now. So
Well,
sadly,
shit,
that can't happen.
If you want to sing right now, then I can put your voice and I can dub it over the.
No, I feel like it wouldn't be. It would be out of tune, and that would be
it'd be-
embarrassing for everybody. So
Okay.
we just don't want that.
All right, Lucas, don't let me down. Between the
No,
two of us, we have to
we're
find
gonna
this.
find a way.
We're gonna find a way.
I found it on some stupid CD party track somewhere, and it was the most fun.
What were those old CDs from the super tracks of the '90s or something for the worship songs of the '90s or whatever? They used to have a set that they would bring up like by decade, and that was like the big thing. Wow,
Yes.
that's what they were. Wow, and I forget what the acronym was.
Something of worship. So,
Something of worship. Yeah,
Yeah.
like anyway, that used to be. I know. I mean, that was. You see people like, did you get the new Wow?
yeah, that was a
Yeah,
thing.
That was a thing. Okay. Well, right now, Ken and Lucas are searching for that on Google. And so, shall we find it, we shall add it. And so, with that, I bid thee a great farewell and an animal birthday song to end the show.
That's not the one, but
That's not the one. We'll find it. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great week.